Hey, I'm Doug, and welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. In this video, you're going to get a chance to meet Justin Crew, Kirk Hammett's guitar tech for over 25 years. Before working with Metallica, he worked with the likes of Led Zeppelin and AC/DC, which means he knows a thing or two about guitar. It's going to be a really great interview. We're going to spend some time talking about the history of Kirk's gear. We're also going to talk about the on-ramping of the Axe-Fx, some of the benefits of using that live, as well as some of the nuances of using that in the studio. We, of course, are going to spend some time also talking about Greeny and so much more. So with that said, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Justin Crew. Justin, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So your first show with Metallica was the infamous Tower Records parking lot gig in San Jose, California. That was a crazy show. In the video of that, you can see Kirk is using a pair of half stacks. Since then, Metallica has kind of scaled up, as have the size of the venues. Can you walk us through the evolution of Kirk's rig since then?
Well, if I remember when I started, we were tri-axis for clean and lead with rectifier heads, rack-mounted rectifier heads in a rack with the Bradshaw rig, with the Bradshaw pedal board. There was a whammy pedal in the middle of it somewhere. On the Strategy 400s, powering the ISO cabinets, powering the speakers on stage. Slowly went to the Randall Egnator with the plug-in modules. Then the Mike Fortin Meathead, modified for Kirk, solid amp, never let me down. When we went to Antarctica, so everything had to be solar power, we wound up with the Fractal. With the Fractals, it's identical across the board. We're not miking up speakers that are wet because it's humid. It's all very, very consistent. When they're in the tuning room, they'll play some of the songs that we're going to play that show. So when they walk out with their ears in, it sounds the same. They're comfortable. First chord sounds just like it did in the tuning room, because we can do things with the Fractal that we can't do with a real amp. And the noise floor is so much lower. So I can, if I'm a little late getting out of lead sound, we won't get a lot of hiss through the PA. And it's much more controllable in that respect. And we can do funky things and put delays and reverbs after the amp, before the speaker, or we can put a volume pedal between the speaker and the amp, which you can't do with the tube amp, and well, not without a lot of smoke. So we can have more of a studio version of a sound if we need it. So we've got, and we have stomp boxes and the ground hums that we don't have with the complicated rig that we used to spend a day fixing and getting that right before the band walked in. We'd put up the whole racks together, then we would allow a day so that we could go through Kirk's rig, James's rig, and Robert's rig and make sure nothing was humming and everything was as quiet as it could be. We don't have to do that now. So we've embraced the technology, and it's been good to us. And when Greg Price, our front of house engineer, got on board, he was a little skeptical till he heard them. And then he was a little concerned. And he walked up to Chad and I at the front of the stage. I remember it. And he said, "Guys, all you need to do with those is just turn them up." So he was very happy.
Given the size of the venues you're playing, inner monitors are pretty much a necessity. Can you walk us through some of the nuances of how and why you pan things for your mix and for Kirk's?
If we're running cabinets on stage, I have a separate output there that doesn't have any cabinet modeling, obviously. But the front of house, or the whole audio team, so that's recording, monitors, and front of house, get the same signal. And the monitor guy will adjust that so that we hear what we want to hear. Because my mix is very, very Kirk heavy. A little bit of James, really just so that I can check tuning, hear if something's going a bit awry. James's vocals, so I can find where I am in the song very quickly. And just what I call the timekeeping drums, kick, snare, hat. I don't really want to hear toms or anything like that. And that is pretty much my mix. And I used to have, when we were tube amps, I used to have the Boogie one side and the Fortin in the other side. So that if I heard something crackle, I could tell instantly which it was. Boogie was on my left, the Fortin was on my right. Or if something was cutting in and out, it would allow me to find that quickly. Now I have them pretty much centered. And Kirk has his stuff panned. It used to be hard left and right, James on his left, Kirk on his right, which I always never quite understood, because when they're playing on stage, James is always on his right. But that's how he has it, so that's how we had it. And of course, this didn't happen before when we had mono in ears, but now we have stereo in ears. It's good. But because of where we are playing, and we're playing in the round, and the amount of PA that we have up there, you're always in front of 2/3 or 3/4 of the PA. So we found that it's much easier if we pull that stereo imaging in and give it a little bit more banging right in the middle of your head to keep you on time, keep everything a little bit more focused. When it's a little bit spacious, it's tough to fight that immense amount of PA that's coming at you and behind you and all around you.
So a minute ago, you mentioned that when you were using the actual Boogie and Fortin heads, you were hard panning them so you could kind of keep an open ear in case one of the amps was acting up. Now that you're using the Fractal, has that changed the need to hard pan those? And are you using the same amp models inside the Axe-Fx?
I started off just mirroring what I used to do, but that's now not necessary, because it's not likely that one of the models in the Fractal is going to start crackling and the other one's not. So I've been able to do the same thing and pull them to the center so that I can have a little bit more space for stuff. So maybe we can push the drums a little bit left and push James a little bit to my right so that I can distinguish. But I'm much more central than Kirk has, even though we're all coming back more central just to fight the PA and the level of it. I use two models in the Fractal, and you can obviously, one's a Boogie, and you're going to have to guess what the other one is. So, and it's very. I mean, we modeled it, and we sat there and we listened, and we had a great mentor, Matt Piccone from Fractal. He was stunning. He's got great ears, and when we sit him down with Greg Fiddleman, they talk the same language. They feel the same things, and they work great and have a lot of trust in each other. So that's always good. And we trust Matt, and it's just, it has to be a sound that Kirk's happy playing. That's my first step. And I always have a little bit of friction between him and Greg Fiddleman. Greg's always after a little bit more gain, and Kirk's like, no, it's a bit gainy. Okay, guys, that's the first knob on the amp. You guys tell me where you want it, and I'll do it. And it's not. I don't have what do they say? A dog in this hunt, or it's any skin in the game on this. I don't mind. I can just move the knob. It doesn't matter to me. But you two decide. And that's always, the day one of recording, how much gain we're starting with.
Traditionally, when captures are made, it's a guitar player, potentially their tech, and an amp or amps in a room, not the whole band. So I'm curious to know if you guys had any experience where you got great tones on the capture, but when you brought them into the whole mix with the rest of the band, they didn't work, and then you potentially had to recapture the sounds to make them fit.
Totally. When we first started, because we were using ISO cabs in the real world, the tube amp world, we have found that woomph, that breathing, that Big Mick used to call it dog breathing, where the cabinet kind of struggles to breathe because it's pushing against these four walls that are fairly close. It took us a long time to emulate that in the Fractal, and then we sat James down with it and all pleased about ourselves because it took us 2 days to get that together. And James went, yeah, but it's still got that annoying thing about with the ISO cabinet. We were like, oh, hang on a minute, turn that up. Yeah, that's it. That's what I've been missing. And at that point, I think both Chad and myself realized, oh, we're not necessarily going after the same. We're going after better. And it was like, oh, that was literally a eureka moment for both of us, that we realized, oh, we got to stop thinking like it has to be the same as what they had, because we can do better. And that was a big moment. And yes, you're quite right. Once you get the whole band going, then it can maybe not fit. We recently tried approximating the sound of the newer album, the 72 Seasons, and we went more in that direction with Kirk. But then once Greg Fiddleman had heard the recording, he was like, sounds great on its own. It just doesn't, I can't sit it in the mix right. So can you go back? So we did. And now everything's happy. So you're quite right. Just because it sounds correct on its own, it's like if you listen to one of my amp models on its own, you think, well, that's a bit thin. And you listen to the other one, you go, oh, that's a bit dark. But together, they're great.
Before we started filming, we talked about the fact that the guitars generally are living in front of an awful lot of PA, pumping a huge amount of volume. And the pickups were picking up the sound of the PA. Kind of curious to know how big a problem that is, how you potentially solve that if you need to, and are traditional pickups compared to the EMGs more subject to being, if you will, microphonic of the PA?
So, yes, being that the PA point source is probably, I don't know, it's maybe 16 or 24 different stacks of PA. And then you've got all the subs, everything, obviously, because laws of physics, he can't speed up the sound from speakers that are further away from you. So he has to delay stuff that's nearer you. So when you pop an ear out, James is maybe 1 or 2 beats. I can see his mouth, and it's like, oh, you're here, but you're not there yet. And it's very disconcerting. And yes, you're right. So therefore, the snare drum hit is hitting the pickup out of time. And you can hear that, but you can only really hear it if I'm sitting there with Kirk very loud in my mix, in ears, concentrating on it. I'm sure in the recording, it might pose an issue, but even in recording at the studio, if the big speakers are on, it's loud, you could definitely hear that as well in the pickups. And you can hear stuff going on. The active pickups don't seem quite as bad. The passive pickups are more microphonic, just nature of the beast. So yeah, you're picking up a lot of PA. It is so loud, even though we have come down to a much more family-friendly level recently. But yeah, it's a lot of SPL that's hitting those pickups, and yeah, they're microphonic, and it is what it is. But that's part of the character.
Because of the difference in output between the traditional pickups and the EMGs, so I recall you running the wireless 2 dB quieter for the active pickups. The other things is that when you've got guitars that are this different, I presume you're using them specifically for the difference in sound. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you wouldn't want to try and make them a little bit more homogeneous, if you will?
Yeah, I learned that lesson. Kirk brought in a Strat he wanted to play on nothing, and I tried to make it sound like it had humbuckers, and it's like, oh, this is just not working. But we tend to pick a guitar that suits the song. If it doesn't suit the song, then we'll pick a different guitar. For instance, the Mummy and the Purple Sparkle Ouija, which is one of my favorite sounding guitars, should be very, very similar in character, but they're not. This Purple Sparkle has an Alnico EMG in the front, 60A, I believe. But because they're all painted, I can't really chop and change them out. So rather than make all the guitars sound the same, that pickup to me sounds better on the clean. So for a song like One, then that's an ideal choice because it's got this beautiful fat clean sound, or Sleeps is another one. It's got all this lovely fat clean sound, and then it's still got the bridge pickup to do the Metallica thing. Which the Mummy not so much, but in Fight Fire with Fire or Fuel, then that Mummy kicks butt, and it's a great sounding guitar. For some reason, it's slightly different. They're all slightly different, and we also get that the new guitar brightness, and for some reason, I don't know why, pickups do mellow in quite a short time. You got to play them, and even those active pickups, they mellow, and it's like straight out the box. Oh yeah, that's pretty bright, but it soon calms down. I put that in the tuning room for a while, and it'll all calm down.
So, in your opinion, how much do strings matter, and what are you using, and why?
We're using Ernie Ball paradigms. I love them. They are very, very break resistant. I'm not saying they're proof by any means, but a great thing about them for me as a working guitar tech is, say, for instance, the spare detuned guitar, or the spare C sharp tuned guitar, or his hotel guitar. The life of them is great. So, you you can put on a set of strings on a guitar and not play it, and 2 weeks later they do sound dull, even though you've never picked the guitar up. But the paradigms don't seem to do that, and they don't have a coating, so they don't feel like some of those strings. But they retain their brightness really, really well when you're not playing. With Kirk, he punishes the strings. His strings are not usable for the second show, so they only get one show each. But if the spare tunings don't get touched for 3 weeks, which is fairly normal because of the way we tour these days, we do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I'll get back to it, and it's like, oh, this is not bad. I've got time. I'll change them, but it's I could definitely put that guitar in his hands as a spare if you popped a string. And with his hotel guitar, that's great because he doesn't need to bring it in every day for fresh strings. He can bring it in once every 2 weeks, and he gets fresh strings, and it's fine. We use 10. It's basically a 10 through 46, but we drop the bottom E down to 48 to get that thunk, that Metallica chunk. And when we go to a D tune, we go up a gauge to 11 through 48, but we swap it for a 50. And then if for Frantic or Dirty Window, where I'm down to a drop C on a D, basically a D guitar with a drop C, then I go to a 52. So that's how we do it to retain that. And you can definitely hear the difference, because at one point we tried 9s, 10s, and 11s, and we were trying them all. And the difference is definitely noticeable when you're hitting a guitar with a Jazz 3, hitting those strings. You need something to fight back. Otherwise, it just gets a jangly mess.
You're responsible for changing Kirk's presets on the gig. That essentially means you're his feet. It must take a huge amount of trust between the two of you and just kind of an understanding and a knowledge of where things are going to happen at the right time to make that happen with consistency and excellence. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's extreme amount of trust, and it's mind blowing that he does that. But there's no other way. I mean, for pure practicality, we have to do that because we have 12 microphone positions. He has 8 wah-wahs. We can't have that. Would be 20 different pedal boards up there that he would have. Same for James. Same for Robert. Kirk is obviously much more switching heavy than either of the others. But yeah, it's a challenge, and it's you have to learn the songs. And because of me not being much of a musician, I can't do I had some on the table here that Jason writes out these cheat sheets, 8 bars of pre-intro, and then pre-chorus of 4 bars, and then 5 bars of this, and then the after chorus, and all that. I'm like, and you can't count that because you're mopping up beer or tuning a guitar or fighting with the security guy because there's some kid that's not well and you need to get to help. There's always something going on in my world. So the way I do that is I actually made a CD to put in my car, and I put it on shuffle of just the songs that we do in the show, so that when I'm distracted by driving, mowing the lawn, walking the dog, anything like that, I learn the songs and I hear things I wouldn't hear if I was just counting, like a little push by Lars, or just an extra cymbal or an extra snap on a snare, or an upstroke for James that go, oh, here comes the solo, boom, and I'm in. Because if I have to rely on counting bars, if you lose count, you're screwed. So you have to be in the song, and not being a musician, that's the way that it works for me. So it takes me a while to get there. And when I'm sitting in my hotel room trying to learn these songs during rehearsals, it's very hard. But the minute I can get distracted and listen to them, even if it's on the plane and I'm not counting bars, that's when it all goes click and it becomes a habit. You know, if I'm in an elevator and I'm hearing Sandman, and I'll stamp my foot for the solo or stamp my foot for the clean, it's like, oh, geez, it becomes part of you.
As a Brit, curious to know if Greeny or the replicas thereof have a particular significance to you because of, for example, Peter Green and Fleetwood Mac. And if so, can you kind of unpack that?
I don't know about being British makes any real difference to me, because when I was growing up, I was into pop, Slade, Sweet, maybe T-Rex. Thin Lizzy was about as far as I got. What other albums did I have as a kid? That's pretty much it. I was into rockabilly soundtracks like That'll Be the Day and all that sort of stuff, but pop. So all the musicians I knew, the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, The Who, anybody like that, they were British. I really hadn't heard of Kiss and bands like that till I was probably at work, so 20 years old, and until that all started leaking onto the English market. And but the one song that I did hear, Albatross by Fleetwood Mac, blew me away, and I was just like, wow, that sounds great. And that's why I picked up a guitar. That's what I got interested in, and that's why I started hanging out with proper musicians or friends of mine that could play. I just wanted to, that was just amazing. And then fast forward, like you said, 25, 26, 27 years. Oh no, that's just my Metallica career. Fast forward till 20, I guess early 2020, when I was standing in a room in northeast London. So I was tuning Greeny, and in the room I hear Albatross played, and Dave Gilmour's playing it on I guess a lap steel, might have been a pedal steel. And I'm thinking, oh my word, I think that's when it sunk in what this guitar was and what it meant to me personally. I was like, oh, this guitar that I'm holding here is the reason that I'm standing here. Because if I had never heard this song played on this guitar, I would never be here. It was weird. And yeah, so that's the first time it really, really hit home how important this guitar. And since then, I've researched the guitar, and I found I spoke to the guy that originally put the neck back on and repaired the headstock. I spoke to somebody else who recovered the guitar after it had been stolen and hidden under a bush. And I've been slowly gathering all the intel, so that I've got a better understanding of it. And it has been an interesting research project. And understanding what it means to Kirk is also important, and how he really, really wants to share it with everybody, which is why he uses it live, rain or shine. It can be pouring with rain. And I look at him and I hand him Greeny. He's like, yep, we're going to do it. Like, okay. And out there walking the pouring rain. It's like, all right, here we go. And then that's why he went to the trouble with, and a lot of effort went into it, to make the reproductions with Tom Murphy of Murphy Labs and Gibson, even down to the not so hands-on intense, just regular Gibson USA model, which plays great, and it's got that sound, and it just, he's made this guitar so accessible. It's not just this toy for a wealthy person. It's real. He uses it every night. It's a real instrument. It sounds great. It didn't to me at first because it was just so different to the EMG thing, but I got on board pretty quick. And yeah, it's going to be cool.
So there's another 59 that is in Kirk's possession. Of course, that is the Blackburst. For those of you that don't know about the guitar, it's basically one of the rarest Les Pauls out there. It's a factory original black Les Paul standard. The story goes that, as best as I can recall, the person who bought it couldn't afford a Les Paul custom, so they ordered a standard painted black. Kirk's now in possession of that guitar. And if you happen to see the Howard Stern interview where he's talking about the writing of Enter Sandman, he's actually playing it, and it sounds awesome. So, Justin, can you tell us a little bit about that guitar and kind of getting that into the mix?
I know he chased it for a long, long time. I nearly had it a couple of times, so I think it's like, mission accomplished. I have it. We were playing it on stage a lot, but we've now, if you like, retired it temporarily off the stage because it is so smooth and linear, the sound from it, which is lovely on its own. But coming back to what we were saying earlier, it doesn't have the grit or a little bit of character to push it out the mix. It is so smooth. It's tough for both the Gregs, Greg Fiddleman and Greg Price, to feature in the mix without it just being too loud. Because but if you hear him playing it on his own, it's smooth as silk. It's really nice. It just, like you're saying, perfect doesn't mean it fits perfectly in the mix.
I first met Kirk in what I believe was 1983 when he was playing in Exodus. And I remember watching their set just going, wow, whatever it is, this guy's got. He looked great. He sounded great. He played great. And this was before he started studying with Joe Satriani. And it was before he wrote one of the most iconic riffs of all time, Enter Sandman. I'm kind of curious to get your take on what the essence of Kirk is and what about that makes him great.
I think the easiest way to answer that question is to invite you and whoever else is listening to go and look at the Jeff Beck tribute that we just did in the Royal Albert Hall in London and watch Kirk's solos in isolation, because he was like, how do I play like Jeff Beck? And I was like, just do your Kirk Hammett thing. And after all these fantastic blues players and everybody, he just went and shredded. And that to me was like, yep, that's what he does. That's what he does best. And the audience, I was watching the audience. Again, I like watching the audience. I was watching the audience in the Royal Albert Hall, and they were a little bit like, oh, this is good. Oh, we like this. And everybody's up and clapping. And there was a lot of guitar techs there because there was a lot of guitarists. And he definitely got the guitar tech seal of approval for that one and solo of the night, both nights running. So I was very, very proud of him. And that to me is the essence of when he's going for it and playing his best. And he just went for it and it was great.
Getting back to Enter Sandman, I love the interview that the band did on Howard Stern. Kirk is playing the riff on the Blackburst. It's super cool. Lars is talking about kind of how there's 4 sections and that Kirk originally kind of had the first and the fourth section, and then Lars had him repeat the first section 2 extra times. Really cool to talk about how that riff came together. Curious to hear your thoughts and take on what that whole show was like, because in one of the clips I saw, you can hear Kirk calling for you.
Howard Stern thing, we were told that Howard was going to ask him about the Blackburst. So I had the Blackburst all ready to go. Here you go. I'm totally prepared. And then he says, so Greeny. Oh, man. And we're in the studio. And I'm running down the hallway to try and grab it. I'm trying to put the things and the belt pack. And it was just, and then, of course, you're doing this at ungodly o'clock in the morning because of the time difference, because we were in LA. He's doing a morning show in New York. So this is ugly. And we're all tired. We're all beat up. So that was like, thanks very much, Howard. But yeah, that was an interesting situation. So yeah, and then he went on, and then he pointed out that Lars helped him write that riff or turn the riff into a catchy riff, improve the riff, which is exactly what happens in the studio. That whole story is like, yeah, that's actually what happens. Lars will be going, no, when you put your finger there, that one, play that one twice. No, not once, twice. Okay, yeah. Now go back to this bit and play that bit. And that's how the riffs evolve. And that's how it went.
So your first gig for Metallica was the infamous San Jose parking lot show. Total insanity. I mean, just the whole thing was nuts. What was it like coming from, was it Genesis or Mike and the Mechanics to Metallica and that gig?
It was, like you said, it was insanity and it's shell shock. I'd seen Metallica perform when I was working for AC/DC, but that was at a festival stage and mosh pits out there. I mean, I kind of got it, but to experience it up that close and personal, because we didn't really have a barricade. It was supposed to be a secret show. I think record company or promoter or somebody would have got a little nervous and they leaked it out, maybe at a radio station. I can't remember which one, KLOS maybe. But somebody had leaked it out, so everybody knew, and a lot of people showed up, a lot more than we were expecting. and that the police didn't think that was very cool, and we didn't have proper barricade. I'm not even sure we had a security guy of ours on hand. And yeah, it was on that. We had a flatbed with roll-up sides, set everything up, just pull into the parking lot, bang a ground stake in, start the generator, and go. And when a bottle of Jack Daniels, empty bottle of Jack Daniels comes flying past your head, it's a little different than working for Mike and Mechanics or Genesis. That doesn't happen with them, but this band it did. It was intense shell shock.
So Metallica was already huge by the time you kind of came on with that first gig. But did anybody have any idea how massive this thing was going to continue to grow into being?
I don't think anybody had an idea. I mean, if you look at the contemporaries, nobody had this amount of success for this long. I mean, a lot of bands, very good bands, have had a lot of success, but this has gone on for a long, long time, and they're still relevant. We still have a #1 album, and I read all the comments that people are putting this new album up with their favorite, whether it's Justice, Kill 'Em All, or Puppets. It's like, yeah, that's kind of like joint #1 now, or it's #2. And that's great because normally nobody wants to hear the new ones. They always want to hear the old ones. But with this band, when you get out there, they just want to hear the new stuff. And it's been great for me to take that journey and learn with them, because it wasn't my kind of music at all. I grew up on Britpop. T-Rex and Thin Lizzy was about the heaviest it got for me. It was normally Slade or The Sweet or somebody like that. So to come into this was very different, and I really enjoy it. And I'm not saying this just because I work for them, but every album to me is their best. The newest one is their best one, because I guess I'm on that journey with them, and I kind of see where it's headed. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I get it. I didn't get some anger at first, but now I get it. Now I understand the excitement and the energy that was in it. And also I realized the stepping stone from getting from where they were to where Death Magnetic was. You had to have some anger. It had to be there. You'd never got across that bridge without it. So, and now we're starting to play, we've been playing Dirty Window and Frantic live, and it works well live, and the crowd are loving it. So I guess it was just a little ahead of its time for most fans, but some of them love it.
Be it a parking lot show in San Jose or the giant venues you guys are playing now, Metallica has made it clear that it really cares about the fans. I just love that. I'm kind of curious, from the inside out, what does that look like from your perspective?
Well, I literally do see it from the inside out because we've done so many shows in the round. So I am looking from the inside out at all the fans. And it is the Metallica family, and the people that get close in to us, black ticket holders and everybody like that, are so respectful. I cannot tell you how much they are. They understand. They're very excited, and they want to be part of it. But they understand I've got a job to do. They understand Kirk's got a job to do, and everybody's had a few beers, and it can get it excited. But my mother-in-law was in the Snake Pit in Hamburg, and she was loving it, and everybody was so respectful to her. And she's 77. I hope she won't mind me saying that. But she absolutely loves being in the Snake Pit, and it's being part of the Metallica family. She loves it. I mean, James says it, but it's real. It really is real. And I see him on the planes home, and we will wave and say hi. Yeah, it's definitely that's one of the funnest bits of this whole thing. Watching the crowd in general react to stuff. Well, recently we did Sandman as the third song of the set, and they were just in watching that reaction is so much fun for me. And then we opened up the first two shows here with one with Cthulhu and one with Orion, and they were like, "Whoa!" I mean, it's unusual, and I mean, a lot of thought goes into that, and but yeah, that's probably the funnest part, and I can touch the front row, as can Kirk, and when he comes running around to get his guitar for the first song, He's hanging out with them, taking photographs. He's taking video of them. They're taking video of him. He's signing stuff, and it's very much very fan friendly. And like I said earlier, or maybe I did, we have dropped the level of the the noise. The sound has come down considerably, so it's a much more family friendly level these days.
So looking back after 25 plus years, what are some of the highlights?
Wow. Okay, that's tough. Antarctica obviously is very, very memorable. Um, yeah, that's pretty good. The Jeff Beck tribute, the Peter Green tribute is very, very cool. Um, we've done some pretty momentous shows that have stuck in my brain, but some of them for weird reasons. It's like the first time that we used fractals um, in Sweden in front of 70,000 people without a sound check. That'll get your attention because we'd never done that. And here we are, and we have to do it. And there's no sound check. Ecstasy's playing. I'm putting a guitar around his neck thinking, oh my God, I hope he likes this. Because if he doesn't, I have no plan B. So there are memorable things and people that I've met through this that have been great, but not for most people's reasons. Yeah, there's been some pretty cool moments that we've experienced all together that have been fun.
So, what advice do you have for somebody that wants to start out doing what you do for a living?
Boy, that's a really tough question because I remember when I was a young teenager or maybe a middle teenager, I kind of had two things I wanted to do. If you like, a teenage bucket list. I wanted to drive a Corvette because I lived in England, and that was just might as well fly on the Starship Enterprise. And I wanted to work on Top of the Pops. I didn't want to appear on it, or just one night would have been fine. And I was working at Lloyd's of London doing marine reinsurance, and I got bitten by the bug and basically ran away with the circus and met some great people in my life. And I was very young when I started, and most of the people that I hung out with were 8 years older than me, 5, 10 years older than me. But when you're 20, that's a huge step. And I think that helped me stay a little bit on the straight and narrow that I had in this business, as far as you go, the straight and narrow, because I wasn't hanging out with friends of my own age. I was hanging out with these people that had a job to do. They liked to party and liked to have a beer at the end of the night, but they had their job to do, and I fit in, and they taught me, and I learned. And it was, process of just being better and better and better and going for it. And people that I've met and encouraged, it's very difficult to stay motivated at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's pouring with rain and you're standing on some airport runway getting soaked, waiting for some customs guy to finish his tea break and come and help you. So you got to have your heart in it. You can't do it for the money or for any other reason. It's got to be something you want to do. And there was a great moment. We were playing, I think it was Louisville. It was definitely during the COVID times. I think it was Louisville. And Kirk played with Judas Priest, guested. And so it was on the stage next to us a little bit earlier in the day. So we went over and I had like a wah-wah pedal, I had 2 guitars over my shoulder, and a bunch of cables, a tuner, everything else. And I'm coming back with all this crap and I've got 2 guitars hanging on me. And I'm not far, it's like maybe 200 feet. And I'm walking up to my workbox, I'm pouring this. And there was this very smart young man in black, total roadie, black polo shirt, black pants, total roadie look. And he said to me, I know you're busy. I'm just like, yeah, okay. Got 2 guitars on, all the wah-wah pedal, tube screamer, tuner, couple of cables, all the crap. Probably a roll of gaffer tape. And he said, I just want you to know, but I saw you in the Cunning Stunts video and you were a guitar tech. And I thought, that's a job? I had no idea that was a job and that's something I could do. And that's what I've become. Thank you. And before I got a chance to put everything on my workbox and turn around and ask me his name, he'd gone. He was very sorry for taking up any of your time. I would love to meet that young man at some point. If he could contact you and we could put us together, that would be awesome.
So how would you sum up the past 27 years of being part of the Metallica family?
I love it. I definitely feel, to sum it up, when we went to the Albert Hall and we were with Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck's family, all these different families that were there. When we got back to Hamburg, and we'd been running hard and heavy, everybody had 3 days off in Hamburg. Kirk and I were working. It was nice to come home. It felt like home. So what do you do? I've worked for a lot of bands, a lot of great guitarists. And but this is, to me, where I live now.
Justin, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your insights. Much appreciated.
Thank you for being interested in the whole story of Greeny, Kirk, Metallica, and myself. I mean, we're just doing what we love. And we really do all love it. And we've lasted 27 years so far, Kirk and I together. And that's a lot longer than most marriages.
I also want to take a moment and say thank you for checking out this video. Cheers.